Hi friends, it's November and I am devastated. October is over, but we had a great October with so many releases and I definitely watched the most out of the whole year during October. So I'm going to wrap up all the good stuff, all the recommendations, and every facet of what I watched during October. But first, I want to thank today's sponsor, Surfshark, for making so much of this possible. Surfshark is a VPN, which stands for Virtual Private Network. Not only do they encrypt your data and keep you protected when you're surfing online, they also can unlock geo-blocked content. And there was a couple films this month that I used them for. I use them for unblocking certain streaming platforms, including Tubi, but also films that aren't available in my country. So I can rent films that I've wanted to see for a while or see them on time when they're released in America. And let me tell you, I have a deal for you today. If you go to surfshark.com/spooky, just like it's written here, you can get it for an unbeatable price and 4 months extra. That's 4 months extra. Make sure you go to this link, surfshark.com/spooky, to get that deal today. You will not be sorry. They do have a 30-day risk-free money-back guarantee. So you have nothing to lose. Check out Surfshark today. And thank you to Surfshark for sponsoring creators like me. I started with It's Alive. I watched this with a couple of friends and let me tell you, I love the stylization of this film. It's about a deadly baby that is on the loose and the mother and father who try and get it back and control it. It sounds crazy, but I've seen this poster my whole life everywhere, and I can't believe I'd never seen this film. I thought maybe I had, but when I was watching it, I definitely haven't before. The movie does go downhill, which is why I didn't give it the best mark, but I love the stylization and the way it's shot and put together. There is a lot of great shadow play and setup, but it does drag on a little bit. But it was really fun. If you're into pregnancy horror with a little bit of a twist, I've watched a lot of pregnancy horror lately. It seems to be the thing of 2024, body horror and pregnancy horror, which I guess is two of the same. I do recommend this one. It was definitely a classic that I'm glad I watched. And the baby, the design, it's very odd. It's very odd and it's worth checking out. And there is so much memorabilia for this film, which I think is so funny when you know what the baby looks like. But yes, it's a classic and I'm glad I watched it. Next, I watched Hold Your Breath. This is a Hulu original, which means in Australia it's on Disney Plus, and it is kind of like a period piece about dust. It's about a mother who is living with her kids in this isolated town, again, isolated, and it's Sarah Paulson with her children and kind of like this metaphor for the dust and how it controls their life. But the dust works in two different ways, one being this origin story of this man who is looming in their presence that the kids believe, and then also the dust, which is actually harming their health. And this film actually has a lot of religious aspects, which I wasn't expecting. I thought it was a good watch. I actually thought some parts were really quite creepy and scary, and I wasn't expecting it to be so scary. And I just think it takes a really interesting path and I was not expecting that. I do recommend checking that one out. Next, I saw The Rule of Jenny Penn. I can't believe that was this month. I'm not going to talk about this film, and it's because I did film a Come With Me for this, and I've never done this before, but I filmed a Come With Me that I'm not releasing until the film gets released. So let me just try that for an experiment. We'll skip over it for now, but I will be back with information on that for you guys. I know that's really weird. I've never done that before. After that, I watched What's Inside. This is a Netflix film that blew me away and blew a lot of other people away. It's kind of like a sci-fi, edgy thriller drama, and it has such a mind-boggling concept. Basically, this guy brings this device to a party which allows people to switch bodies, but you don't know who's in whose body. And they try and play a game out of it, and let me tell you, it does not go very well. It is such an interesting film, especially going in and not understanding any of the characters and their backstories prior. So how it all comes together and how you discover things along the way while still discovering who's who. It's twisted. It's absolutely twisted. They have a really cool way of stylizing who is actually in each other's bodies, if that makes sense. But it's a really cleverly put together film. Highly recommend it. Put on your to watch list. It's very fun. I went and saw Terrifier 3. Can you believe that happened to me? For those who don't know, I was talking just before seeing Terrifier 3 about how people make up these shock value. Someone fainted, someone vomited, and I've always said that on my channel. And then when I went and saw Terrifier 3, 2 people fainted in my cinema. And I was sitting at the very bottom of the steps because it's a pretty big cinema. And I had to help both times, and I just can't believe it happened. I honestly would never believe anyone else, so if you don't believe me, I totally get it, and that is fine. I just cannot believe it happened. The reason that Damien found out about this is because I emailed him. I know Damien because I worked on a video with him, and so I just emailed him and his producer real quick, and I said, this happened. I can't believe it. Now I believe it. And then he said, can we tell people about this? And I said, yes. I didn't expect it to turn into what it did, but that's how he found out about it. I had a lot of people message me and go, oh my God, did you know Damien knows? I know Damien. And I told him that's how he knows. I didn't expect it to turn into what it did. Let me tell you, it was no benefit to me. I was fighting for my life in those comments, and a lot of people got really angry at me, but it happened. I don't know what to say. Anyway, I saw Terrifier 3. I have a whole review on it if you do want to check that out. October was wild. And then I watched Finding Yeezus. This is not what you think it is. I am a huge fan of Hannah the Horrible on YouTube, and she had I don't know if it was an older video, but she was talking about different conspiracies online, and there's this conspiracy that there is this game about Kanye West and other rappers that is meant to be a cult game, like literally part of a cult. It's a long story, but she talked about how there was this Australian documentary where people were trying to track down where the game came from, and this is the documentary. I think you can watch it on YouTube. It was super interesting. It's just really fun and really unserious. I would recommend checking it out if you like to find origins for little pieces of internet lore. Then I watched House of Spoils. This is a Prime horror movie. This one is about a new chef who got their own residence and they're opening up their own kitchen, but this kitchen has a wicked past. I think some of the visual aspects of this film were great. I did find it quite predictable, but I do think it's a fun time. This movie also had Barbie Ferreira in it, who I love, but I really liked the way they put together the dishes and the food itself. They made these kind of weird concoctions you would only see in, Michelin star or like 5-star restaurants, where it doesn't quite make sense unless you're tasting it. So you can only really imagine what it tastes like. I know this sounds very basic, but I just think that they did the visualizations of these different dishes and how they put them together. I think it was pretty extraordinary. And it was this kind of mix of disgusting and really interesting at the same time. So they had that whole element to it, and yeah, I enjoyed it. It was fine. After that, I watched Azrael, which this is the new Samara Weaving horror movie. I went and saw this at a film festival, so I finally did get to see it in the cinema, even though I know it was released in cinema in America. I didn't get a full cinema release here, so I was really happy to catch this one in the cinemas. It is a silent film, basically. The film takes place in a dystopian future where Samara Weaving is being hunted down. It's a religious kind of paganish film, but it's set in the future, and the horror within it, the entity and that whole spiel is really interesting. I loved the soundtrack and the way it was put together. It was just this emotional music with, the cracking of the leaves and sticks and all that kind of stuff as people were crouched down, hiding in the wilderness. It was a really interesting film, the way it was put together. I didn't know if it was going to hold my attention, but let me tell you, the second half really blew me away. So if you do watch it and you find in the first 10 minutes you have no idea where it's going, it's for a purpose, trust me. The reveal at the end of this film is so good and so worth your time, so definitely check it out. This one is on Shudder in most countries now. After that, I watched Frankie Freako. I love this. This is by the same people who did Psycho Goreman. When you want to switch your brain off and just watch something that is so over the top, out of this world, this film is for you. It's about this square kind of guy who has the house alone to himself for the weekend when his girlfriend goes away or wife goes away, and he is visited by these little goblins and they just start wreaking havoc, and it just goes further and further into the most outrageous, over the top scenarios. It's set in the 80s. It's just like slapstick, silly, goofy, nonsensical, random humor, and I very much enjoyed watching it in the cinema in a crowd. I saw this one again at a festival, and it was just so fun. It was a fun time, and I really would recommend, if you like silly, goofy movies with a lot of puppets, which I thought was really cool. Everything is comedic timing and very self-aware. And if you're just down for something fun to break up your week, Frankie Freako is for you. I really enjoyed that film. That was really fun. After that, I watched My Old Ass. I really wanted to see this one and I kind of missed it on its initial release, but wanted to go into the cinema and just watch it before it left. This one was different to what I expected. I knew that it had Aubrey Plaza in it, and thank God my friend Lucy told me before I went and saw it that it didn't have as much Aubrey Plaza as she wanted, so I wasn't expecting too much. But it is about a girl it's like a coming of age. She's got plans to go off to college and leave her family. She's still living with her family, and she goes on this psychedelic trip and meets her former self, and it kind of changes the way she sees the world and her outcome. It's a really thought-provoking, shake-up film that makes you think about where you are in life and what you're grateful for, all that, all that good mushy stuff, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really well-told story and a little bit unique as well, which is good. Watch District 9. This is a rewatch, just totally random. You guys will figure out what's going on very soon. I'm working on a very big video. Anyway, I watched District 9. I watched this when it first came out, but I couldn't quite remember it. I wanted to have it fresh in my mind. This is such a clever movie, and I forgot it's kind of like a comedy. It's a very dark comedy that is a huge allegory for the apartheid in South Africa. And it is about when aliens crash land on Earth and they're put in camps. And then someone who is meant to be looking after the camps gets swept up into a conspiracy, and then everything turns against him. It is an epic film. It's so interesting the way it's set and the setting itself. Action, drama, dark comedy with a real message. I love District 9. I think it's a fantastic film. I think it holds up really well, especially for all of the special effects. I thought it did so well. I can't believe that this was from 2009. That doesn't even make sense to me because it looked fantastic. If you haven't seen District 9, watch it. And if you haven't seen it in a while, it is worth a rewatch, 100%. I really like that film. Okay, the next film is Akira. Can you believe I've never seen Akira before? This is a very famous anime from the 80s, which it blows my mind. I know it's the late 80s, but it blows my mind. Every 5 minutes, I swear, when I was watching this, I kept realizing that it was from the 80s. It is so ahead of its time, and I feel like everyone has several classics that they have not seen. I want to know what your classic horror movie or any movie that you've never seen is down below. There's so many, but this is one I hadn't seen and I really needed to check it out. And oh my God, I didn't think I was gonna get got, but I really did. It got me it really made me emotional, and I was not expecting that. Basically, it's about a biker gang that gets caught up in this conspiracy and how it changes and possesses one of them. It's this whole dynamic of power and loss of self and one's identity. It's just a beautiful film, and the reveals are grotesque. You will not see it coming. I don't want to spoil anything, but it's just a fantastic ride, and if you haven't checked it out because you're not into anime or you don't like action that much, I really think you should check it out. And I'm so glad I saw this instead of putting it off for another couple of years. After that, I watched A Different Man. This I did a review on, Come With Me. Beautiful, strange, twisted thriller with body horror elements. It's one of those twisted films you don't really know where it's going, and I felt that in the entire runtime. It really had me on the edge of my seat, poses some really uncomfortable questions about humans and how we interact, and I just absolutely loved it from start to end. It's about a man who undergoes a treatment where his physical appearance changes, and from there, his old life is presented to him in a different way, but he's no longer able to connect with that person. That is putting it lightly, but honestly, go in blind because it's a fantastic ride. But I did a whole review on it, and I loved reading your comments. I felt like we had the same thoughts and still have the same questions, which I like. It's very ambiguous in some ways, so it's a really good film. After that, I watched VHS Beyond. I liked this one. A lot of you guys kept messaging me about the Justin Long episode. I was really blown away by Kate Siegel's, did I say episode? Segment. Kate Siegel's segment at the end was really interesting. She has a very cosmic horror approach, and I was not expecting that. I didn't know what stylization kind of captured her, so it was really interesting. But of course, this is sci-fi. VHS Beyond is sci-fi themed. I think it's one of the stronger entries for VHS. I know people are gonna get upset about the way I say VHS. As everyone knows, it's an anthology series. I don't think that the overarching story that connects all of the segments is that strong in this one, but I do think most of the segments in this one are very strong, and the horror aspects and the visual effects just keep getting better. So I think they're really well done in this, and I watched as a group watch, which I think is such a fun way to do these films, and I know they're going to keep coming, so I very much look forward to seeing future segments. After that, I watched Thriller, A Cruel Picture. I actually dressed up as Madeline from this film for Halloween this year. I'll put some pictures here if you don't follow me on Instagram. I think I did okay, except for the fact that I had to take these in a public park and people are walking their dogs and I looked very suspect. It's a Swedish revenge film from the 70s, and it just goes so hard. It's about this woman who is traumatized as a girl, really, and then she is taken and trafficked. And it's just horrific what happens to her. And she has this revenge story that's just so badass. A lot of people say that this film inspired Kill Bill. So I thought that was interesting, and you can definitely see why. I'm not really a huge revenge film fan. I like them. I'll watch every single one that comes out, but it's not something I gravitate to that much, or not something that I put on my favorites list. But this one, there was something about it that really spoke to me, and I really, really enjoyed it. I watched Daisy Diamond. I talked about this in a recent disturbing list, films that will ruin your day. This one is so tragic. It's a drama with Rumi Rapace, and it's about an actress who is struggling with motherhood and trying to get a role. It's a really hard watch. I wouldn't recommend it to most of you guys. And then I watched Your Monster, yay, which I did a review on as well. I was so lucky to see this early because it's still not out in my country. I enjoyed this one. It was completely different to what I thought. Basically starts off with a woman who is going through the worst of the worst. It's Melissa Barrera, and she is dumped, but she's also going through other things, and she finds her rage or her monster in her house, and she has to learn how to coexist with it and kind of come to terms with her own feelings. At the same time, her ex is putting on a play which she was meant to be involved with, so there's a lot of these feelings on the surface and awkwardness, and it's just her coming to terms with herself and how she actually feels, processing emotions, being vulnerable, but also standing up for herself. It's a very weird film. It sounds simple, but trust me, you will not see what's coming. It was a good one. I enjoyed it. Manic was also in one of my disturbing movie lists. This one is Joseph Gordon-Levitt. It's like a very raw film, very stripped back, done with a handy cam, very low budget. It's him and a bunch of kids who are put into this program because they are dealing with mental issues. I've spoken about it at length in a disturbing video. I'll link that up here if you want to check it out. Because I also spoke about the next one, which is Playground, in that video, which is such a fantastic film. This one is about kids, and it's only ever shown through their perspective. So not POV, but the camera is always at eye height with the children. So any parents that are in the film have to bend into frame, or they're just out of focus. It's really interesting, but it's basically about two siblings. One watches the other one being bullied at school, and how they don't have the tools to be able to stop it, especially at that time of their life. It's a very heartbreaking film. After that, I watched Caddo Lake. Oh my god, guys, this is such a good pick. I put it on my what to watch this month list, and I'm so glad I checked it out before looking at anything else. I'm gonna do you a solid and tell you it is worth your time. But because it is a very twisted mystery, I think go in blind and just know it's a drama. And it's about this lake where this girl is living and her relationship with her family. I'm going to leave it up to you. But it's very much worth your time. Hi, my camera shut off and I didn't realize. And I was going for another 20 minutes. You can tell the video's long. Okay, let's carry on. After that, I watched All Hallows Eve. This is one of the origin films of Terrifier or Art the Clown. You can really see how far it's come. It does have some similar attributes in terms of the plot. The film is more about the scares than any real substance, but it is about a woman who is babysitting and she watches these tapes and they have different clips of art, basically. If you do want to see the origins of art, it has pieces from the Ninth Circle, I believe, in this film, but it's not a great film as an overall piece, but maybe if you want to see how far art has come, it's good for that. I watch as a group watch. it's good for Halloween, but I did not enjoy it that much. After that, I watched Daddy's Head, another film that I wish I enjoyed a little bit more. Felt like it was all about the scares, which is not a bad thing. It's about a boy whose father passes and he is left with his stepmom, and it's more about their relationship, but it also is about the looming grief that is set on the household. Isolation, they're in this big house and they just don't have any trust for each other. So it's a really interesting dynamic in that regard. I think that the film is quite slow and it didn't grip me the way I wanted it to. You do have to pay close attention because there's so much going on in the shadows and it's all about the stylization and the unique spooky elements. But I wish I liked it more. I feel like this one can be very hit and miss with people. It's on Shudder. After that, I watched Rebel Ridge, which is a Netflix action crime thriller. I thought this was going to be a lot more action-based, especially from the trailer, but it is more about a conspiracy and the crime behind it. It's about a man who is stopped by police. It turns into him uncovering this whole conspiracy theory and how much danger he is in with this task force. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. Again, I thought it was going to be just action and shootouts, and that is really a small percentage of this film. It's worth a watch if you like crime thrillers, especially twisted ones. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Then I watched Pumpkinhead. Pumpkinhead is such a funny film because you always remember it for the entity, of course, Pumpkinhead, but it's not really about Pumpkinhead at all. I mean, he is involved, obviously, but I'd say he's like half of the story, and it's more about grief and loss and desperation. The movie is about a little boy who gets into this accident after these college kids pass through town, and his father becomes desperate and conjures Pumpkinhead. And it has all of these different elements. It's like this witchy ritual, and then the dynamic between these kids who come into town and how they act towards each other and their power play. It's a really interesting story, and it's also got this strange, almost Stephen King stereotype setup where it's in a small town and it's the old man rocking on the, I don't know if he had a rocking chair, I could be making that up, but he owns like a gas station and, you know, these passers-by coming through town who are evil. It's a really interesting rewatch. I wish they would do an updated Pumpkinhead. It doesn't even have to be a remake, more like a reboot. I just don't think we have anything to lose at this point. No one's touched it in so long. And going back to the origins, I've seen this film countless times, but I didn't remember the setup at all. So I think it would be really interesting to see it remade and rediscovered. I don't feel like anyone is really that particular about Pumpkinhead, so it'd be interesting to see a different take on it. After that, I watched Blood, Tea, and Red String. This is a very odd stop frame animation that I found about these little creatures, these mystical creatures that live in the woods, and they become obsessed with this doll. And then these mice come and steal it. It's a bizarre, obscure journey film where we follow these creatures as they try and get back their doll, and it makes no sense but perfect sense at the same time. Every frame is just a masterpiece. It's an odd film that is creepy yet glorious. I really love this one. It's short and not much dialogue, a lot of squeaks from the mice, but just a really bizarre trip, and I really enjoyed that around Halloween time. I watched the next two for Does This Offend You? The first one is The House of the Devil. This is about, well, this is Ty West's film about a woman who is babysitting, called on a babysitting job, which isn't what she expected. It has Greta Gerwig. I just really love how Ty West commits to a stylization, and this one has a beautiful retro feel, especially about Satanic Panic. And he just goes for it. It's a very simple film, but I think it is ominous, and the reveals are really awesome, and it just delivers you or really transports you back into a time that you have to do a second take at what year it was released, 2009, because it does not feel like that. It captures the 70s and 80s Satanic Panic so perfectly, and yeah, I just really like this film. I always love rewatching it. After that, I watched Fright, which this is dubbed the first ever babysitting horror movie. And it is a UK film about a couple who get a babysitter to come and look after their child while they go out to celebrate. You find out what that means, but they're not giving the babysitter all the information. It is a really interesting setup, and I felt like the mystery element was really fun, but the mystery gets shattered very early in this film, and I just didn't enjoy the second half as much as I liked the first half. I guess I'm so used to in babysitting horror that it's all about what's actually happening, the mystery behind it, what's in the night, and I feel like the reveals happen quite early in this film, but it was worth watching for a piece of history, and I'm glad I've seen it. That's the first ever babysitting horror movie. After that, I watched Grave Torture. Oh my god, I feel so dumb. This is a good film, don't get me wrong, but it took me so long to understand what the title meant, which if you've seen it, I don't know what happened. Anyway, this is a very interesting film. This is an Indonesian horror movie. Joko Anwar, his exploration into a family and their horrific past and how that impacts their religious beliefs. And they are really captivated on the idea of grave torture, which is literally torture in a grave, and how this is meant to happen in their religion. And the protagonist we follow, she is trying to prove whether it's real or not. Very particular, very cool, very scary. Indonesian horror, especially Joko, he does it differently. There's something different. He put something different into his stuff, and it was really creepy. It is a longer film, so you do have to stick with it, but I thought it was a good payoff, and yeah, I very much enjoyed it. I would recommend it to you guys. After this, I watched Smile and Smile 2. I have done a review on that, so I'm not even gonna get into that, but I enjoyed it, and yeah, I think it's really cool that everyone had such a good reception to it. I really hope to see a third one. I think a prequel will be really cool, and it's also something I feel like is missing from the lore. Next, I watched Woman of the Hour, which I did a whole video breakdown on this versus the real case. It's a Netflix movie. It's a thriller about this wild case where this serial killer was on a dating show. I did a side-by-side comparison and explained the real story with the movie and how they changed it all. But what I didn't know at the time, wasn't released, was Anna Kendrick actually gave all of her proceeds to a foundation. I thought it was fantastic, and I didn't know that when I did the video, so I just wanted to update you guys. I don't think that the original story or what it's based on really matches exactly what point they're trying to prove or, you know, convey in the movie. But I don't think that's a bad point at all. And I think that it's really awesome to hear, because true crime can get a little iffy. So it was really interesting to hear that she did not profit from this film at all. But I have a whole video on that, so go check it out. And then I rewatched Longlegs. This was just for a Patreon hangout. Thank you to all my patrons who came. It was so fun. If you want to know more about my Patreon, it's always a link down below. You guys have heard me talk about Longlegs so many times, but I felt like this time I still picked up more things. The next 3 films I did talk about in my Halloween recommendations video. The Demon is a beautiful film about this woman who is an outcast in her town and is using witchcraft because she is so in love with this man. It's a very sad story, but it's got possession, obsession, and I just love the way it was put together. Stylistically, it's beautiful, perfect. A very straightforward story, but the portrayal and the acting, especially from the protagonist, is gut-wrenching. Loved it. And then Terror Train, which I had not seen before. This is Jamie Lee Curtis, who is stuck on a train during a party, and someone is terrorizing all of her peers on this train. It's a slasher, whodunit, stuck in a very interesting situation. It's fun for what it is. I didn't take it too seriously, and it was kind of a one and done for me. But then I rewatched Cherry Falls. Oh my god, I love this film. It needs a lot more hype. Please, if you watch it and you like it, or if you don't like it, that's fine, but please go and review this film on Letterboxd or IMDb. It has such a low rating for how good it is. I just don't understand. Brittany Murphy is in high school when a killer starts picking off her peers, but this killer has a very interesting MO, killing virgins. So the race begins for everyone to lose their V cards. So really interesting setup. It's twisted, mystery, whodunit in a small town, very Scream-esque. I love it. I think you guys will really like it if you haven't seen it. Okay, the next 2 I did talk about again in a disturbing video. Nobody Knows is a really sad Japanese film based on a true story about a bunch of kids who are left abandoned by their mother in their small apartment, and now they must try and survive without her and not knowing much about the world. They don't go to school. It's a really hard film to watch, but it's so well done. After that, I watched On the Edge, which is a film about a man with depression. played by Cillian Murphy, and he is just fantastic in this role. It's a very short and sharp film as well, 85 minutes, but basically he meets this bunch of oddballs and they find something in each other that keeps them going on. It's a very sad story about mental illness and hope and loss, all that good stuff. Really do recommend that one. After that, I watched Venom: The Last Dance. It was so mid, but I don't know what I was expecting. It really takes off the last film, taking place straight afterwards. I didn't realize it was a trilogy going into this one. I've seen the other two, but I don't know. It just didn't have such a immense epic payoff as I expected. I liked the Venom films. I thought that they were fun, but this one, it just didn't live up to the other two. But it was different in its theming, which I thought might save it, but I guess in the end, it didn't really. The film, again, follows on with Venom and his host, Eddie, and they end up in Vegas, and it's got a lot to do with Area 51 and the surrounding area of that, so I think that that was a really fun aspect, but if you're not really into Venom, I'd probably leave it. After that, I watched No Child of Mine, Wasp, Close, Purge, and Mummy. These are all films that I spoke about in my recent video. I'm gonna leave that for you guys just so I'm not repeating myself constantly, especially for those who have already watched those videos. I really do appreciate you guys, and I do appreciate your time. So I talk about those ones at length in a video. I will link that up here, just so I'm not repeating myself too much on this video. Okay, and after that, I watched, oh my god, The Catfishing of Tegan and Sara, which are a band or a musical duo. And they have this new documentary about how someone was catfishing as, I think it was Tegan or Sarah, I can't remember which one, catfishing as one of them. I have watched a lot of true crime, and I'm gonna get into my TV as well. This was not, it was not it. All of the information together could have been in 15 minutes, and I felt like they spread it all out and tried to make like a movie out of it. But I think that the shocking part is just how famous they were. But then again, this happens to normal people all the time. So them being famous, it didn't hold as much gravity for me. Although a good catfishing story, or bad, it's really, really awful, is Sweet Bobby, My Catfishing Nightmare. This one was just released on Netflix. And this is a catfishing movie done well, but it's also about a normal person. I don't know why, it just hits me harder when it's a normal person because the story is so extravagant on its own. I hope you guys know what I mean. There's just something so interesting about a normal person's story versus someone who's just trying to benefit off someone's fame, which seems so obvious, exploitative, and awful. But Sweet Bobby is such a wild ride. I really enjoyed watching this. Really good interviews, by the way, but it's about a woman who meets a man online. They have a friendship for a long time. He's not what she thinks he is. It's very interesting, especially more the psychology behind it, where she is so taken by him and how someone can get into your skin, into your head without you ever meeting them. So I thought that was a really interesting look at psychology and the psychology behind it. Then I rewatched Hubie Halloween. I do this every Halloween. I know this is my toxic trait, is I love Adam Sandler, shitty Adam Sandler movies. People who don't like it, I don't know. It's just so fun. I don't even like slapstick comedy, and there's just something about this that is just so unserious but still moving. Has a great cast as well. Like, everyone is in this film, including June Squibb, who plays his mother, and it's just a great movie full of one-liners. Some questionable cameos for sure, but it's just a fast-moving, wild ride about this guy who lives in the small town who is mocked and bullied by the whole town, and how he takes back Halloween. It's so stupid. It is so stupid. So this is Halloween night. After that, I watched my friend Eric. He released a short film, ericorange.com if you want to check it out. I met Eric through doing this, and I've been following them online ever since. Eric somehow makes everything so effortlessly, so natural in front of the camera. He has like this vlogging approach, which works really well with this short film, which is my found footage. Basically, the idea is he wants to make a horror movie before October is over, and so he starts filming himself just in case anything happens, and it becomes this kind of meta, self-aware film about someone trying to invoke horror and going straight into it, but at the same time, it feels so cohesive with his natural life, and what he's doing is like going to like Charlie XCX concerts and stuff like that. It's just so fun. Short, 12 minutes, and I just loved it. I love people making short films. Live for it, and it saved my Halloween. After that, I watched Carved. This, I believe, is a Hulu original, but again, in Australia, we don't have Hulu, so I watched it on Disney. This is kind of like Pumpkinhead in a way, just the entity. Basically, it's about Halloween and this nuclear spill that pours over this town, creating a killer pumpkin that goes after this group of kids. I didn't love this film. I know a lot of other people liked it and thought it was really fun and wholesome, but I don't know. There was just something about it that I couldn't get attached to. But I'm glad I watched it on Halloween night because it had the full effect. It was a fun themed horror movie. So that is everything I watched in terms of movies. Oh my God. I'm going to put the final number here. See if I can outdo that in November. That was a lot. Let's talk about TV shows. I watched the new Jersey Shore. There's a couple of new episodes out. I think I'm over it. It's really sad to say after how many years of being a big fan. I don't know. I think they're just too grown to be doing stupid crap and everything is so scripted, which it has been for a while, but there's just nothing new happening and it's all the same problem coming up over and over again. Angelina. And yeah, I don't know when I'm going to draw my line on the sand. It might become more of a background show for me. So I was kind of bummed by that. But the reason I wanted to bring that up is because I watched Aussie Shore, which is insane. How many years later they're bringing out Aussie Shore? And let me tell you, I've been watching this show and I've never seen anything quite like it, and I don't think it's a good thing. I'd be curious to hear what people from other countries think, but it is absolutely wild and I've never seen so much activity. I'm trying to put it really lightly on YouTube. Adult activity in one TV show. There's nothing else. It's just everyone literally rocking the boat, like physically. I'm sure people think this about every country where blah, blah, blah shore is in. It doesn't represent any of the people that I know for sure. It's a very specific group of people, which is not bad, you know, no shame to them. They're living their lives. They're young and they're free. Good on them. But I was expecting a show that had more reality aspects instead of just like physical aspects. Anyway, that's my review so far. I'm going to keep watching. Still interested to see where it's going and if any big blow-ups happen, but reality is wild these days. It's just a different beast because people are so aware of social media and how things are presented, where I don't feel like they have the same dynamics as they used to. That out of the way, true crime. Anatomy of Lies. This is a 3-part Peacock series that will blow your mind. You may have heard of this story. It's about this woman who was a writer on Grey's Anatomy and about all of the stories and storylines that she took from her life and put on the show. And let me tell you, she is a scary human being. The story alone is just mind-blowing from start to end. She's one of the most toxic people I've ever seen. This documentary is just outstanding. The detail, the interviews, there's just so much more I want to know, but really twisted journey. I've never seen anything like it. It was so twisted. If you like twisted true crime, check it out. And then I watched the new Netflix series, This is the Zodiac Speaking. I have not followed any of the Zodiac stuff. I mean, I watched the Zodiac movie, but it wasn't really a case that I remembered or was at the forefront of my mind, which is crazy because it is one of the biggest true crime cases and mysteries of all time. But this documentary series really spoke to me and I guess unraveled the details in a way that I could understand. The timeline made more sense. It's about this family that are tied up with who they believe the Zodiac killer is, one of the prime suspects, and their side of the story. And it starts like that. That's not a reveal. It starts with them saying, I don't know if I should be saying this, if I should be revealing this. And it goes through their history and the whole timeline. And I just thought it was really well put together. It made it a little bit more cohesive for me because there's so many moving parts and details and it happened over such a long period of time. So I really enjoyed it. And I really enjoyed the fact that the movie has something to do with this. It shows before the movie and after the movie, and the movie actually had a really interesting effect on the people who watched it who have to do with the case. So I think that's really interesting. If you're into the movie, you'll probably enjoy this. But I thought it was very well done and I highly recommend it. Thank you so much if you made it to the end. I can't believe it. My voice is completely gone. I don't know if you can tell. I really struggled through this. Don't forget, I've already done a video listing a lot of cool content that is coming to streaming platforms this month. So you'll definitely want to check that out if you're looking for something to add to your to watch list more than this video. There is still some fun things coming. There's some fun things coming. Until I see you guys very soon again for a review for an upcoming movie, I'm very excited. Don't forget to stay safe and stay spooky. Bye, friends.